Hello and welcome to this year's Winter Wildlife live stream. I'm Roz. I'm going to be your guide this evening as we explore Ice Age Earth, uncovering the impacts of changing climates on our wildlife. Later we'll be joined by Ice Age expert Dr. Richard Preece, who is here to answer your questions, so do pop them in the comments on YouTube. But before we step back in time, I thought we could start by taking a look at some of our local winter wildlife today. Now, the UK is a great place for bird watching. We have our resident birds that are here all year round, and they are joined in summer by migrants in the spring. Birds like warblers and cuckoos, swifts and swallows that come here to breed. But did you know that we also get a lot of winter migrants in the UK? These birds fly here from further north, escaping the extreme cold and taking advantage of our milder weather. Winter is a great time, particularly for watching waterfowl and wading birds. Here's some wildlife spotted over winter in Cambridge and from some special sites not too far away. There's something so joyful about seeing wildlife in the depths of winter, and there's plenty to be seen. The cheerful chattering of starlings. We have starlings in the UK all year round, but their numbers swell in winter as they are joined by birds from Northern Europe coming to enjoy our milder weather. Putting food out helps birds through the winter and gives us great viewing opportunities. Starlings never fail to entertain, and check out this pair of blue tits. Here we get a lot of collared doves, but in the background, if you look carefully, you might spot a black squirrel. This is something we get in Cambridge. There's another one in the branches of the tree. A magpie is a recent visitor, allowing us to admire the beautiful blue sheen on its dark feathers. Here's one that made me smile, a little wren amongst the cyclamen. And I always love to see a robin. Venture into town and there's more wildlife to be seen. Another squirrel, a grey one this time. Take a close look at its feet on the tree trunk. Squirrels can turn their back feet all the way round to help them when climbing down. Mallards are a common sight on the Cam, as are moorhens and mute swans. Another bird by the river, a statuesque heron waiting for lunch. There are lots of gulls in town this time of year. And here, more blue tits foraging. And a blackbird looking for food amongst the fallen leaves. If you get a chance to escape the city, there's even more to see. Here at Welney, the resident birds have been joined by winter migrants, escaping the cold of Iceland, Scandinavia and Northern Europe. Here we see noisy whooper swans, snowy white with a bright yellow beak, and flocks of pochard, ducks with wonderful russet heads. Further north on the Norfolk coast we see gatherings of wading birds and waterfowl. Here at Titchwell a godwit, greylag and brent geese, avocet, teal, egret, curlew and more. So grab your binoculars and your waterproofs and get watching winter wildlife. No binoculars required for this bold fellow though. Our wildlife today is being impacted by rapid climate change caused by people putting too many greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Now keep watching to the end today, and we have some top tips on how you can reduce our negative impact on the planet. But if we step back in time, we can see how our climate has changed in the past and how it affected the animals that lived here then. We are going to be looking back thousands of years today to a time you might know as the Ice Age, but is also known as the Pleistocene. We're going to be joined live in just a few minutes by Dr. Richard Preece, an expert in the animals and environments of the Pleistocene. He is here to answer all of your Ice Age related questions, so do put them in the comments on YouTube. But to give you a flavour of some of the animals of this extraordinary time, here he takes us behind the scenes to see some of the special fossils held here at the Museum of Zoology.
I'm Richard Preece. I used to be a curator in this museum, and I have a great love of the Ice Age. A lot of my research was devoted to that time period. Now, we call it the Ice Age, but it's important to realise that the Ice Age was not uniformly cold. There are a whole series of interglacial periods, warm periods, between the major cold periods. Well, let's start by looking at one of the most iconic animals of the Ice Age, which is, of course, the woolly mammoth. And here I've got a tooth, a molar tooth of a woolly mammoth. This is the grinding surface, and you'll see it's made up of a whole series of lamellar plates, enamel plates, which are used to grind the grass that this mammoth used to eat. So the other fossils I have here are, this comes from Siberia. This is actually the hair from a woolly mammoth. This is why we call it woolly, because we know that it was covered in hair, and that's some real hair from a mammoth which is probably about 40,000 years old or so. And also dung. We know a lot from these different features that normally don't fossilise. This fossilises by virtue of the fact that it occurs out of the permafrost and it just hasn't decayed, as most of these remains do. You only get the hard bits, the teeth and the bones, that normally preserve. But in exceptional cases, cold here and arid here, dry caves, you can actually find the remains of dung. And this is very helpful because we can say a lot about the diet of the mammoth by looking at the remains in the dung. It's largely fibrous plant material, and we've got a lot of seeds and things, so we know exactly the sorts of plants that the woolly mammoth ate. This large specimen I have in the middle, very seasonal because it is actually the remains of a reindeer. Reindeer had a very wide range during the Ice Age. It got all the way down into the south of Europe, into southern France and Spain, so it had a very much bigger range than it has at the present day. This is also the remains of a reindeer, and this is of interest because this little bone is of a juvenile deer. It's actually been gnawed by a carnivore. If you look very carefully, there are gnaw marks. So this animal was eaten by, we think, a wolf. And we know that wolf was present at this site because here is a jaw of wolf also found in association with these remains. This is the spotted hyena, and these are jaw fragments with a nice row of very large teeth that came from Barrington, a site in Cambridgeshire. This site is of last interglacial age, which is about 120,000 years ago. So this animal was found during both warm and cold periods, actually, the spotted hyena. But there are some animals which are only found in the warmer interludes, what we call the interglacial periods. And perhaps the most famous of those from this period is the hippopotamus. It's easy to think of this, because it's now exclusively sort of sub-Saharan Africa, that this is a tropical animal. But when it was living over most of Europe, about 125,000 years ago, it was living in clearly what we know from the associated plants and animals. It was living temperate conditions, much like those that exist today, just marginally warmer perhaps.
Okay, and now I am joined by Richard Preece. Hello.
Hello.
I'm going to ask a couple of the questions. We've got a couple of questions already, so I've got a few questions I want to ask Richard. But I'm going to start off with a couple of ones that we've had already. One person asked how many different birds were there in the video. I think that's from the video that we did before. And the answer is, I'm afraid I haven't counted. But even when I went to Titchwell Marshes, I counted at least 25 species within like an hour that I was there. So there are loads and loads and loads. There would have been tons more as well. So a lot of different species. And even on our bird feeders, we get loads. So yeah, lots and lots of birds. But I'm going to start off by asking Richard, I'll start off with one question. How many specimens were there in that video? How many do you reckon we have? Do you have any idea how many Ice Age specimens roughly do we have in the collection?
In the collection?
Yeah, that's a big question.
Well, if you count the vertebrates, you obviously have fewer vertebrates, but I'm interested in little ones, so there are thousands and thousands of
thousands.
those.
Okay, we've got a lot. The answer is we've got a lot. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and then do keep popping these questions into the chat, into the comments on YouTube. We will ask them. I'm going to ask a few questions first, and then we'll get to some of yours. So before we get really stuck into this, I think we need to chat a little bit about some terminology, because we've got a few words, some very long words that I'm not going to bother to spell for you right now. We can look them up later. So I've got four in particular that I think we're probably going to mention a lot: Pleistocene, Holocene, Glacial, and Interglacial.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
So Pleistocene just means most recent. That's what the etymology of the word is, and it means it's been defined as the last 2.6 million years.
Okay.
The type site is in Sicily, and it's been redefined as. It used to be a bit younger, so there's been a time grab by the Quaternary people.
Oh, they've made it longer.
We're now 2.6 million as opposed to 1.8 million.
Oh, that's quite a bit longer. It's quite a bit longer. And so the Holocene, what's the Holocene?
The Holocene is the warm period that we're in now. Mm-hmm. That was originally defined as 10,000 radiocarbon years, and that translates into 11,700 calendar years ago is the beginning of that.
Okay, great. So are we in what we would call an interglacial at the moment?
Yes, I suppose we are, because it's an unfinished interglacial period. We are assuming that all things being equal, but all things are not equal, of course, all things being equal, we should anticipate another cold period in about 5,000 years.
Okay. And so when we talk about a glacial, that's when it's really cold, is that?
A glacial period, because as I mentioned in the film, the Ice Age isn't unremittingly cold. Yeah. There are these warm interludes, and those warm interludes we call interglacials. Mm-hmm. So those are of the duration of about 10 to 15,000 years, and are usually accompanied by deciduous forest, so it was long enough for deciduous forest to come back. Yeah. But there are shorter, warmer periods where we didn't get deciduous forest. We had birch forests and pine forests, but not oak forests.
Okay. So I'm going to ask one of the questions from the audience now, because it's related to what we've been chatting about. So, do scientists determine the age of the specimens by carbon dating?
Well, radiocarbon dating is extremely valuable. The problem is that you can only date specimens as far back as about 40,000 years. So that covers the whole of the Holocene, and only sort of halfway through the last glacial period, because the last glacial period probably began around 100,000 years ago, or thereabouts. So we can't go back to the beginning of the last cold period, but only the middle part of it. So there are all sorts of other techniques that we have to employ if we want to go back further.
Right. Okay. Have you got any examples of them, or?
Well, you can use other chemical dating techniques using isotopes like the radiocarbon. You can use uranium series, which has a much longer half-life, so you can go back much further. But there are other techniques that don't give you actual ages, but you can rank
the ages in relative ways. You can say this is older than that. Because of the amount of protein decay, you can measure the decay of the proteins both in shell material and in enamel material. So it's quite a new technique, but it's proving to be very valuable.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. So I think we need to address the elephant-sized animals in the room that are just behind us, because we've positioned ourselves here on purpose because we have some Ice Age animals behind us. Can you tell us a bit about this magnificent creature behind you, Richard? This is a giant ground sloth, Megatherium.
Yes, and this came from South America. There were quite a number of much larger sloths that lived in the Pleistocene. This is the largest of them, came from South America. There were smaller ones that also lived in North America. And these became extinct at the very end of the Pleistocene, about sort of 12,000 years ago or so.
Yeah, and the other magnificent thing right behind us here, we've got a rather wonderful mammoth tusk. When did mammoths go extinct?
So most mammoths became extinct at the end of the Ice Age, but they were about 12,000 years ago, along with lots of the other large Ice Age mammals that we know about, like the ground sloth and so on. But we know that mammoths survived well into the Holocene. So the very last mammoth was still living in a dwarfed form on an island just off Siberia called Wrangel Island, and this was still living about 3,000 years ago. So it was living when the pyramids were erected in Egypt. We still have little mammoths living there.
I don't know what's better, the fact that they were little mammoths or that they were around so recently. That's amazing. So we've actually got a few questions about mammoths we're going to ask. We've got one from Marco from Mayfield Primary. How long was an average mammoth lifespan? Is there any way that we can work that out?
Well, I know that the West Runton one we might talk about was about 40. That was an adult. I think very similar to the lifespan of an elephant, probably in not quite a century, but a bit less than that.
Okay, so quite long-lived then. Yeah. And we've had James Diver is asking, how long is the gestation period of a mammoth? Would that be similar to an elephant?
Very similar. I can't give you a. We honestly don't know because they're extinct, but.
They're pretty long, aren't they?
Yeah.
Elephant gestation.
A couple of years.
I think it's 2 years for an elephant. So it's quite that's a long time to be pregnant. We got any others about how much did a mammoth weigh?
Oh crikey! Let's see if I can crib it off here.
A lot. I think.
A lot.
How much does an elephant?
40 tons.
40 tons
was the West Runton one.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about the West? Because this is kind of a bit of a local celebrity Ice Age animal, isn't it?
Can I hang up and show this?
Yeah.
So this is a commemorative mug because in 1990 the skeleton of it's not a woolly mammoth, it's actually an earlier, older one than that. It was found in North Norfolk at a place called West Runton, and they've got about 85% of the skeleton of this. So we've got some facts and figures on this mug, which is rather a helpful crib sheet for me with you asking all these detailed questions about mammoths.
Yes. So we've got loads of amazing questions here. What were the most common mammals in the Ice Age?
Common mammals? It'll probably be a small vole or something like that probably won't excite most of you, but it'll probably be a small rodent, I should imagine.
And we've got another, how big did the hippos grow back then? Because we looked at some of the stuff from Barrington, and we get hippos.
The hippos are the same species that live today, so they'll be exactly the same size. On another interesting thing is that on many Mediterranean islands like Crete and Cyprus and Sicily, various of these large Ice Age mammals actually made it to these islands where they became dwarfed. So we have, ironically, dwarf mammoths and dwarf elephants and dwarf hippos on some of these Mediterranean islands. and they also seem to have survived quite late and became extinct during the Holocene.
Right, okay, so loads of this sounds like very cute, having lots of dwarf hippos and things like that everywhere. That sounds great. And a top tip, if you want to see a hippo, a local hippo, pop across the road to the Sedgwick Museum. They've got a fantastic skeleton of a hippo from Barrington from this time period. So yeah, it's a great.
So the hippo would be from the last interglacial period, about 125,000 years ago, and that was quite a common animal at that time, and reached as far north as Durham in this country.
Wow!
So
gosh, that is a long way. Yeah.
And it got to the Thames. We have specimens of hippo in Trafalgar Square. We have real lion and real hippo in Trafalgar Square.
Lions in Trafalgar. So because we've got statues there.
Yeah, I know. We've got the real ones underneath.
Yes. Yeah. Amazing. So that links nicely to this question from Sunny. Were there any big cats other than saber-toothed cats in the UK back then? I mean, did we get saber-tooths in the UK?
We did.
Yeah?
We did. Those have been found in East Anglia.
Oh.
We have. They're quite rare, has to be said. Much more common were lion. We had lions in East Anglia, in Trafalgar Square as well. The lion, rather like the hyena I mentioned, occurred during warm and cold periods, so you had it living during some of the coldest parts. So we tend to think of lion again as being a tropical animal, but not a bit of it. It could live in quite cold conditions.
Is that the same species as we get today,
yes.
like the hippo as well?
There were some different clades, but they are same species.
Wow, cool. That gives you a different picture of lions, definitely. Got another question about mammoths here. Have we managed to sequence the genome of a woolly mammoth?
I don't know if it's full genome. We might have done by now, but we've certainly got DNA out of mammoth, and that has told us that they're more closely related to the Indian elephant than they are to anything African. Yeah. So we can say something about their biological affinity.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay. So Zachariah, age 8, would like to know how many different species of animals were there in the Ice Age? Gosh, that must have been
that's an impossible question. I can't begin to estimate, because I work on invertebrates, and let me tell you, there are thousands and thousands of little tiny things. So, no, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't even know how many species we've got alive today.
Yes, that's
so
right.
Looking in the past is going to be even trickier.
Yeah, not even to an order of magnitude. We can't guess to.
Were there more or less species of animals than there are today? Asks Finn Harvey, aged 7.
Well, these are very difficult questions.
Yeah.
I think the diversity probably fell during cold periods, but you probably had a lot more of fewer species, perhaps, like large herds of bison and reindeer and so on. But the diversity was probably greater during warmer periods, I suspect.
Yeah. So here's an interesting question. Were there any different species of mammoth? Because our tusk here is from a woolly mammoth, isn't it?
Yes.
There are other types of mammoth.
Yes. So the West Runton elephant that I mentioned earlier, we call the steppe mammoth, and that differed in the number of enamel plates that occur in the teeth that I showed you. Had fewer enamel plates. And in the beginning of the Ice Age, about sort of 2 million years ago, we had another species that had even fewer plates, and we think that this lived not on by grazing grassland. It actually lived by browsing in forest. So it's a completely different ecology.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I've got a long, interesting question here. Many animals survived extinctions by adapting with the environment, like horseshoe crabs. But why did saber-toothed cats have gone extinct, even though they were more complex than the horseshoe crabs? I think this is a big evolutionary biology question. Why do we get some things that seem to survive and then things that seem more complicated?
Well, one of the factors that occurs in the later part of the Ice Age is the impact of humans, because one of the big debates that's going on with people who study the Ice Age, the big debate is to what extent is climate responsible for the loss of many of these species, and to what extent is it early humans with their increased weaponry, they made ever more sophisticated tools to hunt animals, and to what extent were they responsible? Mm-hmm. The consensus view is that neither explanation explains everything. It seems to be that probably climate reduced the population sizes to quite low numbers, and then the final kill was probably at the hands of humans.
This was really, I'd love to know the answer to this question. I'm not sure we're going to be able to answer it, but I think it's one that would be great. What did a mammoth sound like? Do we think it sounded like any animals living today? That's from Finn, aged 7.
Well, the simple answer is we don't know, and we just guess that it sounded a bit like an elephant. Yes.
So a nice trumpeting sound, perhaps, that would be quite good. And then this one from Theo. What birds may have preyed on woolly mammoths? Birds preying on woolly mammoths?
Well, we know, I don't know about birds, but there probably were. We've got no evidence that in this country that we had things like vultures. We no fossil vultures from this country. Maybe elsewhere we did have. We know that plenty of other carnivorous things would have eaten the dead mammoths. We know that hyenas certainly did, and there are other. But birds, well, I don't know. Just got to think of large birds of prey that might have done. They would be the only ones.
Big eagles.
They had pretty thick hides. I just thought difficult to get into. But
were there any fish that went extinct?
Yes, that's a good question.
It's a good I like fish, so I'm glad you.
We have some relic fish, don't we? Things that live. What's it called? In the Lake District, we've still got some of these Ice Age relics. What's it called? Begins with a P. I can't remember it. I don't know about extinctions, but certainly there are fish that were found more widely. I don't know about extinctions.
Okay. So here we've got a question. How did the mammals survive the cold environment during the Ice Age? So what kind of adaptations would they have had to keep
What, mammals?
Mammals, yeah.
Well, you can see that the woolly mammoth developed both a change in the dentition, that it had more enamel plates, which was probably adapted or was very suitable for grazing, because grasses have a lot of silica, a lot of minerals in the vegetation that they ate. They also had woolly fur, of course. Several mammals have antifreeze in their blood. Things like some reindeer, I think, have special adaptations, and we know that some of these, there were other adaptations for cold, nostrils and so on. So there are all sorts of physiological adaptations, but there are also behavioural ones. I'm sure that they would have adapted to live in warmer little microclimates and so on.
And sort of finding shelter from the storm and things. Are there any animals that have adapted to animals that live today? So do we have any sort of ancestors to the animals that we have today?
Oh yes, there's a lot of things that we find as fossils that were obviously progenitors of things that live today. There are some big mysteries still. We're still scratching our heads about what gave rise to the reindeer, because there's no immediately obvious progenitor. There's no so one day the penny will drop, or we'll find something, but that's a puzzle. Well, there was as I say, I've mentioned a lineage of mammoth going back to the southern one and the steppe one and the woolly mammoth. There were bears, but there were cave bears that we no longer have. Lots of. The big thing about the mammals is that you have a lot of species turnover. So a lot of species that we have at the beginning of the Pleistocene, there's hardly any that survived to the end. I think pygmy shrew or something like it is one of the very few that you can trace right the way back that far. They're tiny.
Like this big.
So everything else has been replaced. So you have all sorts of deer species that no longer survive. The red deer had a long range through warm and cold, but so there's quite a lot of turnover.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Got a few more questions from the audience. I'm going to ask some of mine because I'm going to be selfish and ask some of my questions as well. So we've got a question from James Diver. Were there different types of saber-toothed tigers?
Yes, there were.
And is saber-toothed tiger the right term?
No, it's not. It's not a tiger.
We tend to call
I
them
think
cats.
they call them cats.
Why is that?
Well, it's not related to a tiger.
Oh, okay. There we go. Now we know. Yeah.
Well, so in North America, I think we've got a skull of one of them. There's one called Smilodon, and there were a lot of those found in the tar pits at Rancho La Brea near Los Angeles, because things like mammoth would have got stuck in the asphalt in the tar, and this would have attracted all the carnivores that would have come to eat them. And I remember seeing reconstructions. There were vultures. There were vultures that came to eat the dead mammoths and other animals there. In this country, there's another animal with a saber tooth called Homotherium. I don't know what we call it, saber tooth, but it's a different genus. So there were a whole series of saber tooth that did live, but they are quite rare.
Did that having those really long teeth evolve several times then, or are they
Yes,
all related?
it appears to be completely different lineages. Yeah,
It seems
and
like
of course
such
you
a-
have a marsupial one in Australia,
Yes,
which
of
is
course.
completely different.
Yeah. No, I find that amazing. That it seems like such an unusual thing to have, and for it to evolve so many times. I've got a question from Marco. Back to mammoths.
Oh yeah.
Could mammoths have survived? Is there any way that we could have had mammoths today, do you think?
Well, you had them 3,000 years ago.
Yeah.
The mammoth lived in a very particular environment, this sort of grassland, herb-rich environment. It's called the mammoth steppe, and this spread right the way across sort of northern Europe, Siberia, and all the way, and also North America. And it was quite species rich. And we just don't have that habitat now. People mustn't think of glaciers and really cold environment. It was living in quite lush meadows, and that's what it was living in.
Yeah.
So if we were to bring these back from the dead, as it were, they haven't really got a natural habitat to live in. So, well, one of the reasons for the survival of mammoths on Wrangel Island was you had a little remnant of mammoth steppe there that just was able to support that till quite late.
I mean, that sort of leads me on to the next question in the list here, which is, are humans going to try and bring back species from the Ice Age?
Well, that's, or people are very much trying to do that. We can debate the desirability of that, bringing back an extinct animal in an environment that can't support it is a big ethical question.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be quite, if you had a mammoth, it wouldn't be quite a mammoth either because of the way they would do it. It'd be partly elephant.
Technically it's still a huge challenge. We're not, this isn't something that's going to happen because although you get mammoth DNA, it's very broken up, and it's going to be hard to achieve what some people want to achieve. I don't know.
So we're not quite at Pleistocene Park yet.
No, not quite.
Not quite. So in the Ice Age, I've got a question from Sunny. In the Ice Age, did any whole phylums go extinct?
Whole phylum?
Yeah.
Not that I can think of. Not that I know about.
No. But good question. Good knowledge of scientific terminology there as well.
So I just talk about some of the invertebrates.
I think because we're
dwelling a lot on mammoth.
We've got a lot on mammoth and things like that. We will ask your questions later, but I think it would be really
good. One really interesting. I've told you that there was virtually no mammal that survived all the way from the early part of the Ice Age to the end of the Ice Age. That doesn't seem to be the case with things like beetles. There seems to be very little evidence of speciation. You can trace the same species going all the way back. We haven't got it all the way back to right to the beginning, but certainly for the last sort of 600,000 years ago, there seems to be very little evidence of the new species that have arisen, and you've got a very large diversity of beetles, a lot of species, more so than the mammals. So.
Yeah.
But that's quite interesting. You have a contrast. The mammals and the beetles
I
doing very different things.
So beetles preserve then, because we often don't think of things like
Beetles preserve where you have organic deposits
Okay.
and where it's not been oxidised, where the sediments have not dried out and so on. So we know the beetles that were living next to the West Runton elephant, for example.
Yeah.
We know exactly the contemporary plants because we've got seeds and so on. We've got the snails. We can paint a very good picture of the associated animals and plants.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask, so Richard, I've known Richard for a while, and I think of you as Mr. Snails, because you're a snail expert. I know you're very fond of snails. What kind of thing can you find out by looking at the snails from these deposits?
Well, can I just show,
Yeah.
I brought, this is a collection of snails, does that?
Yeah, if you bring it this way a bit. There we go.
Right, can you see that? This is a collection of snails that I made when I was 13, we've worked out. I looked at some of the dates. And I just want you to look at the sizes of some of these.
You might have to get even closer to show. Shall I?
All right.
Shall I
I'm
hold
going to do
up?
that. So
we've got some really tiny snails. They're about, I would say, about the size of a full stop.
yeah,
They're about that
maybe,
kind of size.
maybe marginally bigger, but
Yeah.
1 to 2 millimetres, some of those. So I want you to get out of your heads the idea what I'm talking about, things you find in your garden. These are very small. What I like about snails is that the fact that they fossilise quite well. They are quite fussy about where they live. They're not quite as fussy as a lot of things like beetles that have particular food plants, because if you obviously find a beetle that only lives on a certain food plant, that paints quite a vivid, you can paint quite a vivid reconstruction of what both the fauna and the flora was like. So these preserve quite well, and they many of them are quite fussy about where they live, and because of that we can paint quite vivid pictures about the environments in which that we're interested in.
Wow. Yes. So really important. It's not just about the big stuff. The little stuff is really, really important.
It can be
as
more
well.
informative. Yeah.
More informative. Yeah. So is it okay if we go back to a couple of big
Do
animals?
whatever.
We've got-
I don't
so
mind.
we've got some
I wanted to wave the flag for the small guys.
Yeah. No, it's very important.
Yeah.
Very important. So Zachariah would like to know if the woolly rhino lived in this country. Did we have woolly rhinos?
Yes, we did. We did. In fact, we have some in our collection from. I think there was one from Retton, where I showed you a site with the reindeer. We had woolly rhino there. There was a almost complete woolly rhino found in Staffordshire a few years ago in a quarry there. That was quite a nice find. It was not an unusual animal. It's difficult to get. We haven't got such nice specimens, complete specimens. We get isolated teeth. You get rhinos at West Runton with the elephant.
Really?
But not woolly rhino there. These are extinct rhino. People asking about, do we have things that don't live now? Yes, we have several species of extinct rhino. I think we had about 6 species of rhino in this country at different times in the Pleistocene.
Wow. Yeah. So none of them the ones that are alive today, because there are a few species
None
today.
of those that are alive today.
Okay. And here's an interesting question from Theo in year 5. Do you know if some reptiles would have been living in the ice ages?
Yes,
have reptiles
we
around?
have the remains of reptiles. So in East Anglia, we know we had a variety of snakes and frogs and lizards that no longer live here.
Okay.
Newt, I mean, I know they're not reptiles, but
They're in
so
herpetology.
we had Aesculapian snake, which is a southern European snake. We had viperine snake, which is not part of the native British fauna now.
Okay.
And of course we had pond tortoise.
Yes, yes.
Fonterrapin.
Yeah.
Also, that was present during warm period.
Yeah. So that's one of, we've got loads and loads of video of Richard talking about some of the amazing fossils here, and that's one of them. We've got a fabulous Fonterrapin, and so we are going to share that on our YouTube channel. Just watch this space, and we'll share that with you soon. A few more questions that we've had. Did cave bears live in Cambridge, and if they did they hunt mammoths?
Right, now I've got to think. Did cave bear... Off the top of my head, I'm not sure, but it's quite probable. I don't know whether there's Barrington produced.
I think we've had some cave bear from some sites around here.
We've certainly had them in the Thames Valley, various sites in the Thames Valley.
I'm trying to. We've got a cave bear skull over there.
Yeah,
I just can't remember.
I can't remember what the label says, but
yeah.
And did they eat? I doubt that they would have eaten mammoths. I think because a lot of these bears, they're actually omnivores. A lot of them, they eat berries, and they're not hyper carnivores like wolves and things like that. They are.
Yeah, I've definitely read somewhere that cave bears tended to be more fond of the vegetables than the meat.
We know this because you can look at isotopes in the teeth, and you can see that they're not eating meat all the time. They're eating a mixed diet. Yeah. And I think cave bears are similar. A lot of cave bears from a site in Norfolk, Bacton has a lot of bears, and whether that accumulation is by humans, because cave bears would produce very nice clothing. You can skin them, and that will be a very.
You get a lot.
You get a lot. They're very nice coat from a cave bear.
So we've got another question about sort of bringing back mammoths. So I've got many organisations like Colossal are using genetic engineering to restore some extinct species like direwolves, woolly mammoth, etc. Are these de-extinction methods going to bring any result? So again, I think
it's not quite my field.
No.
The people I've spoken to about it are very sceptical, and there's a lot of discussion about the ethics of it.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think if we could put the money into conserving what we've got, because we're losing loads of species, and can we just keep the ones that we've got? I think that's for me, that should be the priority. I don't know, that's my feelings. If we face another ice age, can we humans survive? If we do, then would we adapt? I mean, would we have any changes in our bodies, do you think?
Well, this is crystal ball stuff. I think if we just had to contend with the climatic changes, I think we probably would survive. We've survived very many sort of ice ages, as it were, very many glacial events, and people have been here during some really cold times. So I think if that was the only thing we had to contend with, but we're doing terrible things to the environment, and everything's very unpredictable, and goodness knows where we'll be on those sort of timescales.
No, what's happening to the climate at the moment, and the Arctic sea ice and things like that is quite terrifying. So here's a nice question from Caroline Neverett, aged 40. Which fossil discovery has got you most excited in your career so far?
Oh gosh, what that I have found personally,
I think you can interpret that how you like. That you found.
Crikey. Well, there were all sorts of things I got excited about. I remember hearing about these dwarf mammoths on Wrangel Island, because I used to share an office with someone who was a proper mammoth expert, and we couldn't talk about anything else for days. It was just really exciting. I remember another Ice Age discovery which caused enormous excitement, was the discovery of what's been nicknamed the Hobbit on Flores, which was a tiny it's been attributed to our genus Homo, and it was 3 foot tall.
I remember that coming out.
So that was a jaw-dropping discovery, but obviously I didn't do any of that. The things would excite me are things that you'd never have heard of, and there'll be little tiny snails and but just as interesting as all these others is.
Yeah, because that links to the next question that we've got, which is, what's your favourite fossil from the Ice Age?
Oh my goodness, that is difficult.
I always find asking my
difficult.
favourite animal ever is always the hardest.
Yes, I don't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
I think those two discoveries were the biggest things that I can think of. So those are exciting generally.
Yeah. Did any birds go extinct in the Ice Age? Do we have any bird extinctions?
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, yes.
I don't know.
I mean, I know there's one that is, you can see right behind me actually.
I mean, one of the problems with birds is that they are very difficult to identify without their feathers, even more difficult without their meat, and with only a few. They because they fly, most of them, they have hollow bones that don't really preserve that well.
Yeah.
So I know I went to an island in the Pacific, for example, and I know that we had extinct birds in this cave that they used to live on the island, and they certainly no longer live there. They would be endemic. There was a pigeon and a sandpiper, I think.
Okay. Yeah. So we're getting loads of questions.
Yep.
So we'll try and get through as many as we can. Do woolly mammoths have any ancestors which has a living descendant now? So.
Well, the closest relative is the Asian elephant, as I said earlier. And that's
So I mean, it shares an ancestor.
It stares, and they're not
Asian
that close, but they are. That's the closest thing that still survives. Because we had, as well as mammoths, we had other elephants. There was another quite common animal called the straight-tusked elephant, which, unlike the mammoth tusk, is nicely curved. As the name suggests, this had straight tusks, and that lived mostly during warmer periods. So during the last interglacier, when the Barrington hippo was living, we had straight-tusked elephants. We had straight-tusked elephants at Trafalgar Square.
I'm seeing Trafalgar Square in a whole new light after this. Now we're going to go back to some small stuff. Did any invertebrates go extinct in the Ice Age? Did we have any invertebrate extinctions? Yes.
Yes, lots of. Lots of. I mean, the thing about coming back to beetles, these are very good indicators of the environment because they're very fussy about the temperatures where they live, and so you can reconstruct temperatures quite well from beetles, for example. And when the climate changed from a warm to a cold period, you would have spectacular changes in distribution. So animals that now live right up in the high Arctic in northern Russia and so on were quite common all over lowland Britain, for example, right the way down into southern Europe when the climate was cold. And conversely, where in a warm period now we have things that during the very warm periods, things that now live in southern Europe were present.
Yeah. Okay. And this one's another one about invertebrates, so I have to ask this.
Good.
This is from Theo in year 5.
Yep.
Do you have any pet snails?
I don't personally have any pet snails, no.
Yeah. I know people who do, particularly I know people with the giant African land snails as pets.
My favourites are really small. You're thinking of the giant African ones and so on, which I'm sure will have a story to tell in Africa, but that's not where I work.
Yeah. And do you know if there were any Lepidoptera in the Ice Age? That's from Sam.
Oh, there would have been, definitely, but they don't fossilise very well.
I guess they're so powdery, aren't they?
They are. I have found fossil Lepidoptera in the Eocene in the Isle of Wight.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
That's even older.
That's very, very old. There's a particular limestone called the insect limestone, and it's very fine grained. It's when you drop the piece of rock, it's like you're dropping a plate or something. It has a very fine, and you can see all sorts of insects, even with colour. You can see some of they have yellow and black, like squashing a wasp on it. But that's really old.
That's amazing.
I'm sure you have Lepidoptera, but it's not a standard thing. Beetles have a chitinous wing cases, and they preserve
tough,
well.
So we've got so many questions. This is great. If there is a separate ice age to come in time, will there be a high chance of elephants evolving or branching out into separate, so something similar to a mammoth? Do you think we might get a mammoth evolving again, something like a mammoth evolving from today's elephants?
Well, you've got to have a progenitor. We've lost the genus, it's difficult. But looking into these, it's hard enough to reconstruct the past. There's even
hard to
looking into the future.
Okay. Did any animals have poison in the Ice Age? Did we have anything that was venomous?
Oh, almost certainly. There are a lot of things that we have, a lot of poisonous animals. I mean, we talked about snakes. We had adders and things as fossil. West Runton, we had adders. I'm sure elsewhere, I don't know what else we had that had a what's called poisonous. Isn't there a shrew that has a? Is there a water?
There is a type of shrew that is a
Is that a water shrew?
I can't remember.
I can't remember.
Off the top of my head. Sorry.
But I'm sure that in Australia everything's poisonous. So I'm sure that everything fossil there would be just as poisonous.
Were cave bears bigger, smaller, or the same size as normal bears?
I think they were bigger.
Yeah, they're pretty.
They're massive.
If you get a chance when our low gallery's open again, come and have a look at our cave bear skull, because I would say it's about this kind of size.
It's enormous.
And a normal bear skull is more like that size. So they are.
I think they were
chunky.
bigger.
A
lot of animals do change size, as it were, during different periods. The horse was during some certain periods they were as big as cart horses, and some were really small during other periods.
So I think you'll like this question.
Right.
What was the biggest snail from the Ice Age?
The biggest snail? Well, probably not as big as anything. No, size is not the most important thing. No, I should think it's probably the same things that you get. Sepia, the ones, the stripy ones, but
banded snails.
No, the biggest snail that I know about occurred before the Ice Age. Came from South America, and it was about 50 centimetres long, and it wasn't complete. It was missing a bit of it. So so the biggest snail that we know about is a fossil that's about 15 million years old, and it's not African. It's actually South. So the crown goes to South America. That's the biggest one I know about.
So that's all of. Oh, we've got one last question from the audience. Is there any chance to find any Ice Age fossils in the desert?
In the desert?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm trying to think. Of course, Antarctica is a desert, and the biggest desert in the world, and of course there are Ice Age things there. I'm trying to think. Well, there are a number of things that are adapted to really arid environments, and gerbils and things like that. So you'd have to go to caves. I mean, one of the best collectors of Ice Age small mammals are birds of prey. And if those birds of prey roost in caves and they regurgitate the pellets, I mean, a lot of these caves where, if you find such a place, is absolutely full of mammals, full of small mammals. So, and you can find alternations between cold periods where there are lots of lemming and warm periods where there are lots of wood mouse or whatever. So they're the same bird, different diet.
Okay. We've had a couple more questions come in, so we will try and get through all of these. Were there any records of shark fossils who lived in the Ice Age? So sharks. I mean, that would be quite a different deposit, wouldn't it?
Yes. In the very old deposits in East Anglia, we have these very large Carcharodon sharks, but they were probably derived from something that was probably earlier than the Ice Age, but we get those. I don't know a lot about sharks in the Ice Age, to be honest.
I mean, we've been talking largely about local stuff. Is East Anglia a particularly good place to study?
Well, East Anglia is very good, particularly the coast of Norfolk and Suffolk, because the sea has created these beautiful sections that enable you to see a whole range of different deposits, and the West Fronton elephant is a prime example. Bones were sticking out of the cliff rather obviously, and people find remains on the beach and so on. So it's a very good place, and also because of the ice that came over East Anglia. We call it the Anglian glaciation, about 500,000 years ago. It didn't just remove all the sediments, it didn't just bulldoze everything out of sight. The cliffs were overridden by ice, and that when the ice melted, there was a protective layer of till, boulder clay, that prevented later erosion. So that's a very fortuitous circumstance that preserved the fossils for us all to find.
So it's a good tip to go up onto the coast and see.
Yeah, well, you'll find stuff on the beach or whatever. And the other thing about East Anglia and South East England, a lot of gravel pits. There used to be a lot of gravel pits, and all of these things were found on the conveyor belts. Workmen would pull them off. So it was always good to talk to them.
Yeah. So we've got another question. Is there any chance to find any Ice Age animals, fossils preserved in amber or inside a tree? Do we get any amber?
Yes. Trying to think of quaternary amber. Well, of course, the amber fossils are mostly very much older. I have looked at a snail with soft parts in amber, and it was Cretaceous.
Cretaceous? That's proper old.
This is proper old. This is the end of the age of the dinosaurs. Somebody had got, I think they purchased I think it was Burmese amber, and we had a student do some CT scanning, looking at it in the scan. I wanted to see if it had I could see a radula, a snail jaw and teeth. But we couldn't find it. There would have been a eureka moment. But I'm sure there are Ice Age ambers, because there were plenty of trees that would produce the resin that gave rise to the amber. But I can't think of any exciting examples. Because the thing about amber is the further back you go, you just get a completely new window on the world. You've got dinosaur feathers in amber, for example, and all sorts of things.
Extraordinary stuff preserved in amber. But Cretaceous snail in amber, that's amazing. So we've got a couple more questions. I'm going to start with this one. Were there Arctic camels around in the Ice Age?
There were camels in North America during the Ice Age. Arctic camels. Well, we know there were just in northern Greenland. This is at just before the Ice Age, in the Pleistocene. There were deposits. I don't know whether they got camel, but they've certainly got a lot of beetles. They got a lot of. I think there was a hare and all sorts of things. So this was within 800 miles of the North Pole or something like that. Really green. The wood. There was all sorts of stuff. But camels, I think I don't know how far camel got north, but and we had camels in the south, but not in Europe. Not as far as I know. Nothing. I can't think of a camel record in Europe.
So we've got, what is the rarest known mammal in the Ice Age? Do we have any?
The one that's not been discovered yet.
Yeah, there'll be a lot that we haven't got. Yes.
Rarest. Well, there are. I don't know how to answer that. The rarest. Well, because what we find as fossils is very much governed by where these animals live. So things like hippopotamus, we find a lot of, because they lived in water, and they found in the mud of the river, which they are quarrying to get the gravel. Water vole bores into the banks, dies in the banks. bears hibernate in caves. Some of them die in the caves, and you can see how it's easy to find these sorts of fossils. But we have things like saiga antelope or various other antelopes, known from very few bones in this country, but they were here, and they must have been here in quite large herds, but we don't get so much.
It's tricky.
So anything that birds of prey can eat, we can find for the reasons I explained.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask these last 3 questions, and I'm going to ask all 3 of them because they're all about invertebrates, and I think you'll like that.
Excellent.
So we have, first of all, from Theo in year 5,
Yep.
how do snails help our ecosystem?
How do they help our ecosystem? Well, they break down lots of material, and they sort of redistribute the nutrients and so on. I'm interested in them for their forensic value and telling us how we can interpret the past. So that's their value. How do they help? Well, they provide food for many other things. We've had lots of questions about birds. Of course, many waders would live on snails and mudflats, and many of them would live on it.
Yeah. So really important. Everything's really important in our ecosystems. And we've got, did Ice Age invertebrate fossils show any alternation of generations? So,
alternation of generations?
I mean, I'm guessing this is like things
we
like
change from cold to warm? Or
I don't know whether it means that or whether it's something like, jellyfish.
Well, I can't answer the jellyfish part of it, but certainly you get, they show spectacular changes of distribution. Even snails that you think can hardly move at all, there were quite spectacular changes of range on quite short time scales. So that's why they're good. They're good indicators of the past. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And how did the Ice Age snails protect their soft body in the icy environment?
Well, I don't suppose they did. No, I think they were. I mean, a lot of them only live for a year or less, so they wouldn't survive the winter, let alone the Ice Age. But they leave their shells, which is what interests me.
Yeah. And I've just got one comment as well. So you've got one of your former students is watching.
Oh, really?
Lovely to watch along today. I was lectured by Dr. Preece and had practicals, in Part 2 zoology almost 20 years ago.
Oh,
today
goodness.
I watched along with my zoology keen son.
Jolly
So
good.
it's really nice to know. So that's all we've got time for today. So thank you so much. That was really, really fascinating. Just to say, like I said, we've got some more films that we're going to be publishing on our YouTube channel of Richard talking about some of the amazing fossils here. So do keep your eyes open for that. That's nearly it for our Winter Wildlife live stream today. As promised, I'm going to show you a little film to finish off with some ideas of reusing items to reduce waste, which has been put together by our education assistant Sam. This is one way that we can all help the planet. And if you're after more sustainability top tips, do join us in the museum on Saturday. As well as ideas for helping the planet, you can print cards with artist Lizzie Alt and marvel at the starling murmuration installation that she's been creating with pupils at the Grove Primary and King's Hedges Primary Schools, which will be on display in the Whale Hall. You'll also have the chance to handle a real mammoth tooth, find out more about our changing wildlife and so much more. So do come along and join us on Saturday. And until then, happy wildlife watching.